Friends, good morning to all of you. I think this is going to be our second session on presentation of results. I hope you had definitely gone through the first part of Unit 5. So, in this particular session, I'm going to elaborate more on the steps particularly. The reason is we have already seen description of what is a report, why do we write, and then technically what actually is called reporting, various types of reports, then writing styles and formats. We talked about them in the previous class, and then various softwares for writing reports, and then steps in reporting. Of course, we have also seen what is called plagiarism very briefly, and then how to print the report. So, very quickly, straight away, I think we have to move into steps in reporting and then move slowly into plagiarism and printing of the report. So what I'll do, I'll just skip straight away, go to the steps once again. Now, step 1, statement of the problem. Step 2, description of the methodology. Step 3, presentation of the results. Step 4, interpretation. Step 5, drawing inferences. Step 6, conclusion. Step 7, references. Step 8, bibliography. So now what I will do, we'll try to explain each of these steps a little elaborate, and then we will go much deeper into each of the steps. Because what actually goes into each of the steps more elaborately is definitely what you have to learn. It's because you're going to actually write a report out of your summer project and also for your specialization project. In addition to that, you might be writing some of those. Here we go with the step 1, statement of the problem. Now, how do we present this statement of the problem? I'm just giving you some tips on you need to mention it very clearly. That's what we call clarity of the statement. Never use unambiguous ideas or unambiguous sentences or words. And your questions, your propositions, your hypothesis must be very, very clearly stated. And my always advice is present them in very simple words, simple sentences. Never use compound sentences, never use heavy technical words. Because the ultimate purpose of writing a report is the consumer in our mind. Who is going to consume your research? Who is going to read your report? So keep the reader in your mind and then keep moving forward. Now, you have to elaborate more on what is called the significance of the problem, which means how your topic is going to be useful to the stakeholders. That means your readers. So, would solutions presented in your report would be interesting to all stakeholders or very few stakeholders or some of them? So, keep that in mind, and then your documentation has to be very, very detailed, right from the evolution of the problem, and then elaborate more on the previous research done on your topic, and then move on. So, now description of methodology. It has to be very, very appropriate because this is the backbone of your research process, research work, or research report. So, if your backbone is not properly presented, I think your entire research crumbles down. So, therefore, appropriateness of the research methods that you had adopted must be very clearly presented to solve the problems. And then adequacy. This is another important aspect of methodology. Is your sampling adequate? Is it free from errors? Have you used probability sampling or non-probability sampling? We normally advise people to use probability sampling because of the representative nature as well as generalization nature. In other words, when you take perfect sampling methods, you can generalize the output to the results. To the population or the universe. But if you're taking non-probability sampling methods, you may not be able to generalize it to the entire universe. That's the limitation of non-probability sampling. And not only that, sample size, I kept repeatedly saying that a minimum of 50 or 60 is an important sampling because statistically speaking, a sample size of 30 is called adequate. But in my opinion, it has to be a minimum of 50 because you cannot apply certain statistics on a sample which is less than 50. Similarly, you cannot apply certain statistics on a sample which is less than 30. So 30, 50, these are some of the magic numbers. I would always advise people to go beyond 50. That's why in your assignment 3 also I was insisting on that your sample size should be a minimum of 60 and a maximum of 3 digits. So therefore, methodology has to be presented very carefully with appropriateness, adequacy of it, then replicability. Now, what is replicability? Whether your results can be reproduced, or have you reproduced somebody else's results or somebody else's study. So you have to be specific on the replicability of your study. So now let's move on to the presentation. Anyway, I'm going to show these steps more elaborately, more descriptive. So let's move on quickly. Presentation of the results. Now your results have to be presented in all completeness. So nothing should be left out. When your faculty member evaluates your report, it should be complete in all respects. He should not be questioning you. You should not be presenting a sorry figure, sorry face before. So therefore, ensure that in all aspects your project report is complete. Then it also should be comprehensive. That means very relevant details must have been covered in your report. And then what is the outcome of your study? That's called the yield. Definitive solution of the problem must be presented in your report. Then various tables have to be presented very carefully. Are you presenting univariate tables or bivariate tables or multivariate tables or matrices, or what you call frequency tables, cross tables, and so on. Similarly, what are the pictures that you are presenting, or what are the graphs that you are presenting, and then what kind of statistics? I have forgotten to mention it here. In the results, after the tables, you must also be presenting the statistics. So what statistics are you presenting is also very important. So let me mention it here since we are recording it. Tables, statistics. So that's very important. Tables, statistics, descriptive statistics, inferential statistics, mean, median, mode, standard deviation, variance, t-test, correlation, chi-square, regression analysis, factor analysis, analysis of variance. What else? Any statistic that you had applied in your project report must be very clearly presented. So that's all about the presentation of the results. Now this is a very important step, interpretation. Now in interpretation, I want to explain you taking one example today after this slide. So accuracy of the results is very important. So positively check for the accuracy which is included in all the procedures you have followed in the methodology. Then explore whether any bias is committed against your interpretations. In the sense, are you biased in explaining those numbers, figures, statistics? So that must be very carefully addressed. Then usefulness, how the interpretation is going to influence the future work in the topic that you had chosen is a very important aspect called usefulness. Then there are various interpretation styles that you need to pick up. uh, these interpretation styles depend on your language command, the vocabulary that you have, and the style of writing. So one has to pick up this style because writing style is a childhood pursuit. It just doesn't happen today. So if you were fond of writing all through your high school days, your foundations are strong. But if you're picking up now, I think you are a child today. So therefore your foundations will be very weak. And that's one of the reasons why most of the students are very poor in writing today. And hardly 1% or 2% of the students have picked up this style from their childhood. That's the reason. These students can express better, these students can write better, and therefore their writing is appealing to the reader. So concentrate on the language. Remember the consumer of your research and then start writing in, because that's, if you don't keep your consumer in mind, you will be writing something very gibberish. So language command is very, very important. I would always advise that one should resort to simple English. Always use simple English. Yeah, but there is a need for some jargons to be introduced here and there. So you explore the possibility of those. But be again cautious that you are supposed to use simple English, simple language in presentation. Now, this is a challenge for all the students called drawing inferences. Now, it's not that easy because even the best of the best research scholars, best of the best professors struggle on this area. Why? Because inferences are stemming out from your mind, not from the tables. So after seeing a table, after seeing the patterns inside a table, after seeing through the statistical tests that you had applied, you knew the status of your hypothesis. Now what's next? What does it mean to you? What should it mean to the others? That's exactly called the inference. So inferences come from your mind. So you're extracting the hidden patterns and messages from your tables, graphs, and pictures. Give your own explanations about why are they as they are and how does that happen. So why, for example, if you take the case of conflicts and satisfactions, I kept giving you the reason why work conflicts and family conflicts are related positively. So we can give your own explanations. The correlation between both these variables is, let us say, 0.74, which means the strength of relationship is very strong, positive, and statistically significant. So what? So it means that those who are experiencing work conflicts, they carry some of that effect to their families when they come back. That's why you would have seen in most of the movies also in our country, they show that when someone is unhappy with the boss, they show it off on their spouses or their children or their family members or in the streets on the auto drivers and so on. So therefore, this is what we call the manifestation of work conflict on the other space of life. So this is how you can give explanations for every result, for every statistical exercise that you have yielded or that you have obtained. You have to give your own explanations, and these explanations have to be very scientific. They have to be rational. There must be a logic in it, and they must be acceptable to the entire universe. Yeah, some people might critique it, some people might question it, but you know how to defend it. And that happens on the day of presentation. When someone raises you, what do you mean by this? Why do you explain like that? You can always defend your case. That's the purpose of drawing inferences. In fact, there are various ways of doing it. What you can do is you can take the support from review of literature. Because the previous studies also would have found the relationships, previous studies also would have found that findings are the results as you have found. So how did they give their explanations? Just go through the review of literature. That's why review of literature is such an important aspect of research. In the very first step, we had seen its importance, without which you will never have the strength of understanding about your topic. You will never know what is happening across the world on your topic, and you will never know what are the trends, what are the patterns that are happening in your topic. That's the reason review of literature is very important. But one more time, as you are presenting the results, this is again coming back to you. So here, in drawing inferences, inferences are what is happening inside your mind with regard to the findings, with regard to the pattern, with regard to the statistical exercises that you had done. What do you mean if the hypothesis is accepted? Or what do you mean if the hypothesis is rejected? What does it further mean? That's what we call inferences. And not only that, for example, if men are experiencing less conflicts than women, what does it mean? You have to draw inferences. If data suggests that men and women differ in their conflicts, degree of conflicts, statistically, what does it mean to you? These are all called inferences. So, review of literature is another support. And then, if I were there, probably if I'm a pure academician or if I am a student without any experience previously, for me it is much more difficult because I don't have good understanding or I don't have a grip over the subject, or I haven't seen the industry before. I didn't work in any organizations. That's the weakness of many faculty. So therefore, it's becoming very difficult for them to draw the inferences. Now, in that case, there's another solution. So what we can do is we can go to the field back, meet some experts, managers, or senior people in the field, discuss with them about your results, and record all their explanations. For example, why work conflict and family conflict are correlated. You raise that question to them. You say that I found a result like this. What does it mean? Then an expert in the field will give more elaboration, more explanations with lot of evidences, lot of illustrations, and he might quote some cases also. What you could do then, you can switch on your mobile recording app, record all that, but don't forget to put it in airplane mode, and then record all the discussions that you held with various experts. In my opinion, I would advise you at least 5 to 7 experts should be discussed. So, or meet them and raise these issues with them, all the findings, every objective that you had fulfilled, every hypothesis that you had tested. Discuss with your experts and they will give you a lot of explanations. Sometimes you can also come back and talk to your mother and father. They also might give explanations. Yeah, they're also experts in the field. And then you can also discuss with your elder brother or sisters who are working in the industry. You share your results with them. They will give wonderful explanations. So now you have bunch of explanations given by 4, 5 different kind of people. Now what you could do after coming back, you collate each of their experiences, each of their discussions, and see uniformity or consistency or divergent views. Those things can be put in your report. That's what we call drawing inferences with the help of experts. Now you must know how to collate all the above sources, and that's all your writing style. It depends on how best you can put it in writing. So what you could do, there are many softwares. I don't want to talk more about them. That particularly one category of software called data mining softwares or text analysis. Yeah, that's the method. Text analysis will be able to help us. So text analysis softwares will help us to collate from all the files of data that you had collected from the field. For example, discussions with manager 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So files, and then discussions with your parents. You can have 2 more files. Discussion with your elder brother and sister, another 2 more files. So you'll have something like 9 files. Now submit all these files to text analysis software. The software will find out the uniform patterns, underlying patterns, consistencies, similar words, similar sentences, similar themes. It extracts and gives you the final output. And that output will help you to draw inferences much better. So that's the purpose of this step. And then we are coming to the last but one called findings. Now, what do you mean by findings? When I have already presented results, why should I put findings? So you must know the difference between these two. Results are in detail and elaborate form. For example, you're presenting hypothesis 1. So how many tables are related to hypothesis 1? Let us say there are about 5 tables relating to one hypothesis. I'll present all the 5 tables and interpret them, draw inferences in results chapter. But in findings chapter, I will repeat those results, but briefly. So that's why, in other words, findings are called brief results. So you must know how to present the results in brief. For example, if a tabular presentation of the results would go into half page, whereas findings would hardly go in, let us say, 1 or 2 sentences, can't be more than that. So you only take the highlighter point from the results and present it as a finding. That's the purpose of the finding, because some reader might not have enough time to read the entire results chapter. So he'll simply go to the findings chapter and read very briefly owing to the paucity of the time. And that's easier for someone to understand. So with that, we move on to the last one, conclusion. Now, many students struggle to write this section because they do not know how to write this section. Besides that, they don't read others' thesis. When you don't read others' thesis, how would you know how to write your own thesis? So therefore, my suggestion is always read at least 10 to 15 theses of your seniors. If you do that, it becomes much easier for you to write your own thesis. I've done that in my college days. I've done that during my research studies. So I would read others' thesis, even if it is 300, 400 pages document. I would read it because I would enjoy that. Because there's only one opportunity life gives us, and then next time you wouldn't get that opportunity. So therefore, when the opportunity is presented to you, utilize it. because you will never get another day, because tomorrow is always uncertain. So who gets to lockdown is going to be a situation like this? Nobody. So therefore, today is always the best day. I believe in that policy. I believe in that philosophy. So better go through seniors' project thesis to know how they have written this. Otherwise, the easy solution is take summary or gist of each chapter. So in other words, when you are concluding each chapter of your project reports, at the end of each chapter, put a side heading called summary, and write the entire summary of that chapter in a half page or quarter page. And then what you do, arrange them or pick up all those summaries of each chapter, arrange them in serial order, and work out the connections between the paragraphs in the conclusions part of your last chapter. So for example, you have 5 chapters, let us say. If you have 5 chapters in your thesis, you would have 5 paragraphs as conclusion, and then simply copy paste it and connect it. See, connecting means exploring or establishing the flow between the paragraphs. Otherwise, each paragraph looks in isolation of others. So that can be worked out. So with that, we conclude with the steps almost, and then let's go to the last component of the project report called references and bibliography. I've already told you that references are of those authors, their articles, their books that were already quoted in the main body of the thesis. For example, in introductory chapter, you would have mentioned so many authors' quotes, so many authors' material. You would have mentioned so many authors' research findings in review of literature, let us say, in second chapter. In review of literature, you would have quoted, let us say, something like 20, 30 authors' names. Now, all those 20, 30 authors' names would come under references section at the end of the thesis. You have to mention each name, and then the year of publication, the title of the publication, the source of publication, and so on. Many details would come here. Again, you have APA, ASA, Chicago, Harvard style of referencing. So we are following APA referencing. I'm going to show you. And then I had also explained you what is called bibliography. This is the place where you had just read a book, but you didn't quote the author's name anywhere in the main body of the thesis. So let's move on. How do we do it? Now, we first present the second name of the author first and the first name of the author second. For example, if my name is Chandra Sekhar, Sekhar comes here, Chandra comes next. Then in the brackets, I would mention the year of publication and then title of the article, then name of the journal, volume number of the journal, issue number of the journal, number of pages. Then there is something called ISSN. What does it mean? ISSN means International Standard Series Number. This number is given to the journals which are registered. Whereas in case of a book, if it's a book, it will be called ISBN, International Standard Book Number. So ISSN or ISBN has to be mentioned. If you had taken it from internet, supposing if this article is downloaded from the internet, which is not in the print form, so what you should do, there is something called, instead of ISSN, there is something called DOI. So you have to mention the DOI location. There will be a hyperlink of that document. So you have to mention the DOI hyperlink here. So let's see the example. Now here you can see my recent publication. So this is the way I would write Sekhar, comma, Chandra, comma, S.F. In the brackets, I would mention the year of publication. Then the title of the article called Work System, Organizational Support and Quality of Work Experiences in Large Hospitals. And it was published in a journal called International Journal on Recent Trends in Business and Tourism. This is a journal from Malaysia. And then 3 is the volume number. 2 is the issue number. and then PP means page numbers. I'll put it here, PP. Page numbers from 1 to 8, then International Standard Series number 2550-1526, and then full stop. So this is the way we present the references or bibliography. So now what I'll do, I'll discontinue this slide. There's one more point actually I forgot to mention in these steps. What I would do, I'll there's something called appendix after the references or annexure. Immediately after the reference section in your project report, you have to put something called appendix or annexure. Now, this is what is the place meant for any additional enclosures that you want to present. For example, you want to present a Hyderabad map because your study is on Hyderabad, or if you want to present a complete list of sample, so you can have a sample list, or you could even present your questionnaire here, your interview schedule here. So if you have three annexures, you put appendix 1, appendix 2, appendix 3, or annexure 1, annexure 2, annexure 3. So that's how you conclude with the steps. Now, this is a special area in the project report writing because most of the students are ignoring it today, and therefore across the world this has become a big issue for the faculty members. And there are many cases where some people have filed cases against the authors of the projects. Why? Because they have stolen the material. So plagiarism is an important issue today. It simply means copying or stealing others material either from the print sources or digital sources. So yeah, mentioning somebody's text material without their consent or approval is called plagiarism. And stealing is a harsh word, but that is truth because truth is always bitter. And when instead of calling a student thief, it doesn't sound better, but why should you be? So, why do you dye a copy when you can be original? I think these statements would reinforce our thought that I shouldn't be a copy machine. My brain can create words, it can create sentences. Yeah, it can also create reports because my brain is having much power. The brain which created so many marvels of this wonders and marvels in this world. So I think my brain can create. If you believe in creator, you can also create. I remember my previous boss in one of the annual day celebrations, he made a statement that a Nobel laureate in his lifetime would have used only 8% of his brain. That's it, only 8% of his brain. So 92% of his brain is untapped, unutilized. So you can imagine, then immediately my reaction from the audience is, if a Nobel laureate could use only 8% of his brain lifetime, how much of my brain is used today? Not even 0.8%. I know most of us, 95% of the people in this world would have died without using even 0.2% of their brain. What a waste of brain. So anyway, plagiarism is a very serious issue because people will file cases against you. You cannot copy anybody's material just without their consent. So particularly in our context today, we find students copying left, right, center from internet or any project reports of your seniors. And some students are also borrowing the project reports from some companies which are selling, or they would go to a Photoshop company, Photoshop material, when shop fellow, photocopying shop fellow, and then pick up somebody's. I think these are all very, very bad practices. It happens only in India. But there are so many softwares available today online called plagiarism softwares. Some are free, some are commercial. What I can do after writing my thesis, I can submit my thesis to these softwares. They will suggest me how much is copied, how much is natural, or how much is original. I think as a student, I can do that before submitting to the college, because college also does plagiarism software testing. So what colleges, B schools in our country doing? They would submit all the students' project reports in CD when they are submitted. These project reports are subjected to plagiarism softwares online. They will tell you how much percentage of copying is there from internet sources. So if your project is not accompanied with a plagiarism certificate, your project report will not be accepted. And then another condition is there is something called tolerance level. How much percentage of somebody's material is copied? Some colleges have their own policy. It shouldn't be crossing, let us say, 25% max. So if 25% of the material in your project report is copied, it is tolerable. But if it is more than 25, it is rejected. But some B schools in our country have put a cap on 10%. So your project report should have only 10% of copied material. 90% should be original. So how do you know this? This software will give a certificate at the end of the analysis. So when you submit your MS Word file to this software will scan through the internet, identify all the places from where you have copied this text, and finally it generates a 20-30 page document. And then the last page of this document would be the certificate. Now that certificate has to be signed by the competent authority, and that certificate, if it is having less than 25% of copying, then that certificate has to be attached to your project report before submitting it to the college. So this is what is happening across the world. Some universities in our country, they insist on 8%. I think if you reduce the percentage of copying like that from 25 to 10 to 8, I think standards are improving in our country. I know, why should somebody do all this when I can minimize all this copying from myself? I think I believe in that. I always take self responsibility more than imposed responsibility. But in India, we always work on imposed responsibility. Somebody should put responsibility on me, then only I'll work. I think that's a bad model we have adopted in this country. So I think we are coming to the last point, printing. So here in this, as I'm concluding, your MS Word files always are known for having disturbed layouts. When you open these files in a pen drive using another computer, the layout would have been already disturbed. And when you take a printout, your page layouts would have already gone disturbed. The main headings would have gone in previous page and the main paragraphs would have gone into the next page. So this is the problem with MS Word. So that's why my advice is always convert your MS Word files into PDF format after properly laying them out, and then take those PDF files for printing. So that's it all about. So I'm pausing it here, and then I'll continue with another video on elaborations like how each of these steps can be shown as a chapter. So now we are moving into chapter mode explanation of the steps in research. So I will pause here.